This is TWiT.
Microsoft is rolling out two-phase immersion cooling in its data centers. Tell me more about this.
Okay, so the way when you first hear about this, they're like, "Yeah, we're immersing servers in liquid to cool them down," and your mind just kind of goes, "Wait, what?" Right? Like, how can you take servers and dunk them in something that's liquid?
Well, they're IP67, Mary Jo. That's why. That's fine.
First, obviously, it's not water that they're dunking them in, which I saw some misleading headlines. Yeah, it's Kool-Aid.
Right.
They call it an
corn
engineered substance. So some kind of a liquid that is man-made.
So what does the two-phase indicate? That they literally dip them twice?
So yes, no. So when they were describing this to me, I'm like, you know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of how you make beer.
Of course you thought that.
I have an amazing thing that it reminded me of as well, but what does that mean?
No, because there's like condensers and coils and chillers, and the two-phase part is about how the liquid evaporates and is like kind of rotated back in, basically transformed back into liquid.
Oh,
so yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
See, to me, this reminded me of the way they make French fries in Amsterdam, where they fry them twice, and that's the secret.
Oh, there you go.
That's why they're so good.
Same thing. Beer, fries.
It's exactly the same
all the
thing.
Good things, right?
These things are all related.
Right. So the reason Microsoft is working on this idea of immersion cooling is because they want to make it easier to keep data center processors cool. And as they're processing bigger and higher power workloads, especially AI workloads, it really heats up the servers. So right now, the way they do that is with air and vapor, sometimes like spraying down water on data center floors and letting it evaporate. But, there's better ways to do this. And this immersion
cooling. Can we just use ARM processors? What are we doing here?
I know,
Is this like an indictment against Intel or something? Like what?
No. This is ARM and Intel processors.
Wow.
They all need to be cooler. They are pioneering this in their Quincy, Washington data center first. They've been working on this technology for years, and they've actually adopted some of the immersion cooling principles from cryptocurrency and Bitcoin mining. I'm not making this up.
Yep.
It's going to be interesting. They're kind of in like a pioneering phase where they now are putting it in the Quincy data center. They're going to check how reliability is and see how it can be rolled out to more of their Azure data centers worldwide over time. But definitely this is in production. Like it's considered to be in production as of now. And they are claiming to be the first of the major cloud vendors to do two-phase immersion cooling. So Google also does immersion cooling. I guess it must be single phase because otherwise Microsoft wouldn't say they were the first doing two-phase. And I was trying to find out if AWS did immersion cooling in their data centers, and I couldn't find any references to that, which is kind of interesting. So
that is interesting.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, this is pretty cool stuff. No pun intended. And if you want to know more, there's so many Microsoft blog posts and research papers and lots of information that you can find on their site if you want to get into the whole how does this work and what does it mean. There's lots of
I just like that they use friolators for this. I mean, it's the weirdest picture. Seeing a rack server going into liquid just feels wrong.
It's pretty weird, right? Yeah. It's like you take it and you dump it into a tank, right? You flip it upside down, you put it into a tank of liquid.
One of the things that I hadn't, certainly with liquid cooling, the one thing I considered was the fact that you are better handling the heat. But in your piece, you also talk about how it's not just that they're trying to mitigate the heat issues, but also by displacing oxygen and moisture, that will reduce the what is the word I'm looking for?
Corrosion.
Corrosion. Thank you. That's fascinating. I didn't consider those two aspects of it as well.
I mean, I'm sure that's part of the AC you see in data centers, right? It dries the air and helps prevent corrosion. I never really thought about that. I mean, I guess if you lived in a tropical place, you could have a computer that would just corrode just by being there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And
Microsoft they have these modular Azure data centers that they put on a truck and they bring them way out into the desert and really difficult conditions. So I asked if they could do immersion cooling in those truck-based data centers, and they're like, yeah, that would be an ideal use of it, right? They could even put the immersion cooling in those undersea data centers that they were trying, Project Natick.
Right. They could call that sous vide or sous vide.
They could. They could. Look at you, branding. Look at that. Chris Capasella, Paul has some ideas.
Project sous vide.
I love it.
So it's pretty neat stuff. And I like all that research stuff that finally ends up commercial. I'm like, oh yeah, remember when we heard about that way, way, way back in the day? And now here it is being used in data centers.